Well, we tease him a lot 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back to another dicondissectional production hosted by Deathstroke9.
And special guest Deathstroke 8. Today we're going to be reacting to Mike and the Mechanics,
The Living Years.
Yeah, alright. We're back.
Hi, YouTube.
So, last video I did with you, which one was that? What was the last one that we did?
The last one we did was Teach Your Children by
Children.
Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Okay. So, a lot of people requested some other songs along the same lines. A lot of people said Harry Chapin's
Cats in the
Cradle, which we've both heard before. I did a reaction to it earlier on the channel, and then we actually talked about it a little bit after I made that video. So anyway, this was the second most requested thing, which is Mike and the Mechanics.
The Living Years.
Which I don't think I've done anything by Mike and the Mechanics yet, right?
No.
All right, so excited to check out this new group. Do you know this group at all?
I remember this group from maybe the late 80s. The name is familiar to me, certainly, but I don't remember them having any big hits. This might have been their biggest hit. I don't remember this song that much at all, so I'm looking forward to this.
All right. If you're new to the channel, hello. We react to music and talk about the lyrics and do research on it and just enjoy some great music. So, nothing else left to say. I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Let's dig in.
What's interesting is a lot of you guys request songs for me and my dad specifically, which makes me think that there might be a reason for that. So,
sure.
Let us begin. Mike and the Mechanics, The Living Years, 3, 2, 1. Oh my God. Okay.
What do you think so far?
Well, it's very sad. It's very, I don't know. It's. I blame you guys for this. It's interesting because some of the things that he says, you know, like I feel almost like I can relate to a few things that he says, right? But then he says other things that makes me think of things that you told me about, like your dad, you know, and so. And you know what? Listening to this, I'm kind of just sitting here and glad that we have good communication between each other, because that's kind of, the song is looking at, you know, an estranged relationship, but it's like the person's passed away, you know? It's too late once you're dead for us to admit.
Musically, what do you think so far?
Well, it's not musically it's okay. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's
okay.
It's okay music. I think right now it's music to go along with almost like a poem that he's written over the course of time. So let's dissect it a little bit more after the song's over. You want to get back to it?
Yep.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Mike and the Mechanics, The Living Years.
God, that last verse.
I'm going to say, Daniel, as I listen to that, that song is a lot more relatable to me, because he says that he was not there the day his dad passed away. I can relate to that because I wasn't there when my dad passed away. He moved back to New York and died by himself. But just a few years later, you were born. So, how many of you guys, while you're watching, can guess what my dad's name was?
Oh, yep.
So my dad's name was Daniel Joseph. Daniel's name is Daniel Mark. Mark is from my middle name. Daniel is from my dad's name. And one of the things about my dad, while some people called him Danny, most people called him Daniel. And how do we relate to you? How do we call you?
Most people call me Daniel.
Call you Daniel.
Yeah.
So there are nicknames that go along with the name Dan, Danny, Daniel, but we hold it true to the name Daniel.
Okay.
So there was some other reasons that went behind us naming you Daniel, but to bring it back to my dad while he wasn't there, and I certainly didn't get to tell him a lot of the things that I would have liked to said to him. I do see some of him in you, the positive things.
Okay.
So that is a very... You show me a little bit of my dad, even though he passed when I was younger. So it's interesting how this man conveyed those.
Yeah, I don't like when he said that verse. I also thought about how, my name is Daniel and your dad's name was also Daniel. And it's very interesting to me how that song kind of went perfectly. Like, yeah, wow.
You want to pull up the lyrics?
Sure. Let's take a closer look at the lyrics. Thank you guys for joining us, by the way. I started crying.
I had tears too.
All right. So the opening part, so it gets more and more personal. At the beginning, it's big, broad statements where he's just kind of reflecting, and then he tells you the story. So at the beginning, every generation blames the one before, and all of their frustrations come beating on your door. 1 second, let me pull it up so that you guys can follow along with us. All right. So every generation blames the one before. All right. So that's what we've got at the start.
Which a lot of people, based on the videos that we've reacted to, have said we have to remember, keep the song in context. But one of the things that we do, so if a song was released in the 60s or 70s, we know that it was a different time back then. Yeah. But Daniel and I relate the song as we're hearing it and taking it in to what we have experienced, to today's stuff.
Yeah.
So when I see that every generation blames the one before and all the frustrations come beating on your door, I think now, for you, it's a little bit different than it might have been for me or some of your audience. Right now, the frustrations that we have, it's now. It's not based on something of our ancestors or the generation before, like it might have been in the 60s or 70s.
You don't think so?
No, I think right now, the frustration that most Americans and most people have around the world are current events that are going on.
But current events are often influenced by what's come before, or things built up to get to a certain point. But yes, I know what you mean by how so to relate to a song, we kind of relate it to ourselves now, not necessarily.
I think that in this context, the artist is trying to tell you those are the differences that he was having with his father, right?
Sure. Yeah. Another thing is, it definitely is. It starts with a broad statement, gets more personal. It's about the dad. So then I know that I'm a prisoner to all my father held so dear. I know that I'm a hostage to all his hopes and fears. I just wish I could have told him in the living years, which I would assume means while he was still alive.
Sure. And when I hear that, I think we have good communication. And there's probably, even based on our good communication, there's some things we hold back. If we had a resentful relationship, there would be so many more things
that we would
hold back. Yeah. So based off the beginning of this song, it sounds like he has resentment in his heart. So what the build up to this line, he just couldn't tell his dad. And a few of the songs me and Daniel have reacted to, quite the few songs that we did were between a father and a son, right?
Yes, definitely.
So, and this song holds true to that. Very much so. So we thank you for recommending this song.
This song is perfect.
So go on.
So then the next line: crumpled bits of paper filled with imperfect thought. I like to write, so I can remember writing down stuff when I wouldn't say it. I would go write it in a notebook or in a binder or in other places. And I also remember sometimes ripping it up or throwing it out. So that line, I was like, okay, interesting. Then Stilted Conversations, I'm afraid that's all we've got, is conversations where neither person said what they should have said or what they meant to say, and it's all, like you were saying a minute ago, held back. They're not communicating.
Sure. They're concealed. So one of the things I'll say, Daniel, and to our YouTube viewers, I've done a lot of different things to help improve myself, to help improve my relationship with my wife and my children. And if you're listening, please, one of the biggest things that I have learned lately is to validate the other person's feelings. That doesn't mean that I have to agree with those feelings, but I have to have empathy towards those feelings. So those stilted conversations, I'm afraid that that's all we have. If I stifle your feelings and your communication with me, we come to an impasse that we can't cross. So it's so important for me with you guys and anybody that I try to interact with is to understand the other person. Again, that doesn't mean that I have to agree with it.
Sure.
So YouTube out there, if you have children, whatever it might be, parents or interaction with people on the street, understand where they're coming from and validate their feelings. It's so important moving forward that we are validating each other so we don't end up in situations like this.
And you have been teaching me that over the past we've talked about this exact thing a few times over the past few months, and I greatly appreciate it. That's very good life advice. That thing of validating other people's thoughts and emotions, understanding them, because attacking another person is never going to get any understanding or change.
That's
ever.
That's correct.
Anyway,
and ultimately it keeps those feelings. People are afraid to express themselves to you because of it. So if we go back, he holds out. He can't fully express himself.
He thinks he's looking at it like he's a hostage, and then he says that's all we were left with because he passed. The dad must have passed away, and he doesn't he kind of alludes to it, but doesn't confirm it till later in the song. So the next line is, You say you just don't see it. He says it's perfect sense. You just can't get agreement in this present tense. We all talk a different language, talking in defense. That entire thing works perfectly with what you just said, and kind of shows how what you just said is kind of the solution to the talking in different languages and being defensive about it. Yeah. Who's talking here, though, at the beginning? You say you just don't see it. He says it's perfect sense. Is this maybe a friend talking to him?
I think so. He talked about writing stuff down on a piece of paper. I think these might just be conversations that they've had or thoughts that they've had. So one of the things about me is a lot of times when I get frustrated, I'll have a conversation in my head.
Yeah.
And I might even say it verbally out loud. And it might be something that nobody else was meant to hear, but it was directed towards somebody. And just me verbally saying it or writing it down helps me.
Helps me too. Yep.
So we might have a disagreement. I go up to my room. I have a two-way conversation with just myself. And I say what I really want to say. But then I'm able to have conversation or communication with you, knowing that I feel okay because I had this conversation with you that you weren't even a part of. Does that make any type of sense?
It makes sense, but it's also, I don't know.
Because some of the best things in life are the unsaid things, right? But sometimes I just need to get it out selfishly.
Okay.
But and it's not even meant for your ears to hear. And I've learned enough to where some of the things that I want to say, it's not edify. It doesn't build up. So why am I going to release this stuff that isn't there to build my family up, right? But that doesn't mean that I still don't want to say it. It would be the sigh, right?
The sigh. Oh, man. Yeah. All right. Say it loud. So this is the chorus. Say it loud. Say it clear. You can listen as well as you hear. So that reminds me a little bit of what did Disturbed or not Disturbed? Simon and Garfunkel in their song, it was like people speaking without listening or people hearing without listening, something like that. So when you hear it, but you don't actually let it penetrate you or take it in. So then then they tell you why you need to listen, because it's too late once they're gone to realize, oh yeah, we didn't have the best relationship, did we? You know?
You have to, this is like fourth wall type stuff, but you have to give the impression that you're listening.
You should listen, though.
You should listen, but sometimes what you're hearing you don't want to hear. So if it's a very tough situation, this situation, especially between a father and a son, which I'm assuming that this is, it's very hard because me as a dad, I have to be attentive to what you're saying, regardless on if I want to hear it or not. That's the only way I could validate your feelings for you to communicate more with me.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So we open up a quarrel between the present and the past. Wow. Okay. You're only sacrificing the future. When you open up a quarrel between the present and the past, you're sacrificing what could be by not building up, but instead attacking and tearing down.
Sure.
Sacrificing the future and only remaining bitter, and that's what the aftertaste or the continuation, the feeling that keeps coming back would be the bitterness, as opposed to something better, like any other positive emotion, you know?
Sure.
Like bitterness, regret that lasts. That's...
But we're all free to our opinions. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with each other. But I'm still going to love you in spite of some of the things that you might believe, or you might say, or you might do. And I have to be cognizant of that. So if you date a girl that I'm not fond of, it's still your life. I can't hold that resentment towards some of the decisions you made, or else it does sacrifice the future.
Okay.
And then only bitterness is there. So I need to be accepting of whatever you choose, regardless, because if I put up a wall, then it becomes separation. Which, if I want that, that's great. But as a dad, I wouldn't want that separation.
Are there people who would want it? Maybe.
So I don't necessarily I wouldn't say that there are people that do want it, but there are people that builds a fortress around their heart, and they just stack the bricks higher and taller, so nobody eventually gets in there.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that that's what they initially intended to do,
but that's
right?
What seems like
for
a good
me,
idea to them.
I hold on to resentment, and I'm learning how not to hold on to it. But if I stack up the bricks of resentment for everything that I feel is unjust towards me, the next thing I know, without even realizing it, I have this big old wall around me.
Yeah. So next would be don't yield to the fortunes you sometimes see as fate. It may have a new perspective on a different date. So later in life, you might look back and think something different.
Sure.
And if you don't give up and don't give in, you may just be okay.
And to me, that's fighting through our emotions, right? I teach my kids that a lot of times our emotions are like the wind. They blow one way to another.
Any way the wind blows.
That's right. Your emotions will go. So on a different date, tomorrow you might feel a little bit different about a situation, right? And if you don't give up, you keep on fighting, you'll get through it. And I do believe the artist, he went from telling me something pretty directly towards the end.
He's introspective.
Right, and it's more it's a message of hope. I think I even said that.
Yeah, you did.
He's letting you know that if you're able to overcome these obstacles, you have this hope, right? There's always going to be snags that pull you apart, but you got to work through that.
Yes. And a repeat of the chorus. What did you think of the chorus, by the way? Like, to me, that was like the one part that kind of, I don't know. I felt like it could have been a little bit better, maybe? Or, I don't know. Who knows?
And I will say, I don't know what year this song came out. Probably
you said the 80s, right?
Right.
And it definitely sounds like 80s.
That's right. And I think that from a lot of the music you've been listening to in the 60s and 70s, where they were a lot more focused on the music and the lyrics too, don't get me wrong. But this was like a poem that somebody wrote, or this was emotions,
yes, definitely,
that he wrote out and said, I got to put music to this and get my message out.
Yes.
And this was his message, and it's a wonderful message. This song needs to be played more. It's probably never played on the radio anymore. The great thing about your channel is that you're bringing music that might not get exposed to people. And the message and the meaning behind the song is it's a very impactful and a very important message that we all receive it based on our interactions with our parents and our children.
So then we come to the close. I wasn't there that morning, so now it's storytelling. Or not even storytelling, but relating an event.
Sure, first person.
I wasn't there that morning when my father passed away, and I didn't get to tell him all the things I had to say. I think I caught his spirit later that same year. I'm sure I heard his echo in my baby's newborn tears. I just wish I could have told him in the living years.
So in the beginning, there's every generation blames the one before. All of the frustrations come beating on your door. Then we get down to it may have a new perspective on a different day. Don't give up. I think I'm not saying that the artist gave up, but his perspective later on in life was changed. So now he has, I don't know if he has regret, but what I'm getting is the artist had regret that he built up this wall. But he found comfort in finding his spirit in his newborn baby.
Yeah.
And it was a comforting thing because he says, I'm sure I heard his echo in my baby's newborn tears. I just wish I could have told him in the living years, right? So he's thinking of it different later on in life.
Yes. Yep. And that's the end of this very powerful song with a very powerful message and a powerful story. It checks all the boxes, really. For the lyrical content is just.
And the lyrical content, I for me, it's the message that's being conveyed. The lyrical, and I know that sounds weird. I think that there's so much more emotion in this song that the lyrics are even trying to.
There's even more. Yeah,
that's
there's
right.
a lot left unsaid that you can kind of feel through.
And I could certainly feel this man's emotion in this song.
This charted number 1. All right, let's take a look. So this is off the album Living Years from 1988, Mike and the Mechanics. This is the first. Is this the first time we've been able to do this segment of? I keep forgetting to do it
because we let our videos run so long. We enjoy doing this.
Charted number 1 in the U.S., number 2 in the U.K. The song is written from the perspective of a son who has a conflicted relationship with his father. After his father dies, he discovers that he and his dad had a stronger bond than he ever realized, and the son regrets not saying more when his dad was alive. It was written by group founder Mike Rutherford and Scottish songwriter B.A. Robertson. The pair also co-wrote the first Mike and the Mechanics hit, Silent Running on Dangerous Ground. They had both recently lost their fathers when they wrote this song, making it a very personal endeavor for both of them.
And you could definitely feel that in this song.
They
absolutely.
Definitely lived it to be able to convey it so well. The song was written in stages. B.A. Robertson wrote the first verse before his father died. The same year, Rutherford lost his dad. The pair composed the music based on this verse. Then a little while later, Robertson came up with the second verse. The final verse didn't come to him shortly before. You're so right. So he has a different perspective later, and it starts one way, and it turns into more hopeful as it goes on. Like, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right, the final verse didn't come to him until shortly before the song was recorded. Robertson was staying at a hotel in Los Angeles and was under pressure to finish the lyric before flying to Europe. He recalls going outside to a garden at the hotel when the verse came to him. He was working with Rutherford when he got the call that his dad had died, which is reflected in the opening lines, "I wasn't there that morning when my father passed away." 3 months before his father died, his son was born, which we hear in the line, "I'm sure I heard his echoes in my baby's newborn tears."
Mike Rutherford was the bass player and later the guitarist for Genesis.
Oh, wow.
For Mike and the Mechanics as a side project, using Paul Carrack and Paul Young, the one from the band Sad Cafe, not the solo artist. What is that? Carrack, who had a hit in 1987 with "Don't Shed a Tear," sang lead on the song. The song garnered a Grammy nomination for Song of the Year, but lost to "Wind Beneath My Wings," which was by Bette Midler, which is another wonderful song.
We haven't done anything by her yet.
Well, my mom and dad, my stepdad, my mom got remarried, and I think you were a bun in my wife's oven. My mom and we had our first dance, and it was to "The Wind Beneath My Wings." So that song will always, and I'm sure it does to a lot of people, it always holds a special place in my heart. It did, however, win for Best Song at the Ivor Novello Awards.
Novello?
Yeah.
Okay. It's the second release from the Living Years album. Starts following the mid-tempo Nobody's Perfect, which stalled at number 63 in the U.S., despite a video. All right.
The Living Years, it runs 5 minutes and 30 seconds, which that is a good length of a song. 3 minutes is almost too short a lot of times.
I agree with you.
8 or 9 minutes is
it's too long for radio. Some of my favorite songs are really long.
And I agree with that.
But yeah.
So it says, in which another era would be considered too long for radio play. But in 1989, again, the late 80s, listeners had a fair degree of patience. Madonna's "Like a Prayer," Roxette, "Listen to Your Heart," and Bon Jovi, "I'll Always Be There For You," were also U.S. top chart toppers that exceeded 5 minutes in length. What I will say about music, a lot of good music, right? When you're trying to it wasn't redundant, that song. They got the message across and they told the story throughout the whole song.
Oh, yeah.
So it needed that time to elaborate on the message that they're trying to get out.
And it is slow. The song needs to be slow almost, It needs to be drawn out. It's a drawn out process that they're conveying. To be honest, I don't know how they compressed it into 5 minutes and 30 seconds. So there's some other information.
So many listeners heard their own stories in this song. People write to me to this day saying how they had lost touch with their fathers and how they had written to them on the strength of that song. Rutherford told Record Collector in 2014, "Most songs don't have that extra bit that change your lives."
That's incredible.
We've been fortunate that this is our third or fourth song that we've reacted to, and they have all been impactful.
Yeah.
And we see YouTube why you guys suggested that we did this song. It was very impactful.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was perfect. Wow.
Yeah.
That was really good. Very interesting how you guys didn't know a bunch of stuff about us, and then this song kind of mirrored certain things that's very interesting. But anyway, do you have any?
No, I'm good.
All right.
Just really quick, as I always do at the end of your videos, if you like this kind of content, please give it a like, a subscribe, a share, show my son some love. He loves doing this for you guys. He greatly appreciates everybody that tunes in to his videos and supports him. And all you got to do is give it a thumbs up.
Thank you very much for joining us. we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
I might have you on for another segment tonight, so stay tuned, everybody.
Peace and love.
Yes.
Peace and love.